March 1941, World War II, Europe. Balance in the Balkans is shaking. In Belgrade, the capital of Yugoslavia, a sudden coup removes the government that had signed an alliance with Nazi Germany. In Berlin, the news reaches Hitler with fury because his former ally seems to turn its face toward Britain and the Western powers. The Führer sees betrayal and decides that Yugoslavia must be destroyed without mercy. Plans are drawn up not only for invasion, but for the punishment of the Yugoslavs. When the attack begins on the 6th of April 1941, German superiority is overwhelming, and nearly 1,000 aircraft are thrown into the skies over Yugoslavia. Because Hitler has made his point clear, resistance to Germany will be answered with annihilation, Belgrade is left in ruins and its streets filled with the dead and wounded. In just 11 days, the campaign is over. On the 17th of April 1941, Yugoslavia surrenders, cut apart and divided by the victors. But the end of fighting brings no peace. Occupation opens a long chapter of terror, willingly supported by the local collaborators. Hostages are shot, villages are burned, and civilians are treated as enemies. At the center of these operations stands the man who had planned the destruction of Belgrade, and during the war will command German forces across the Balkan. His name is Alexander Löhr. Alexander Löhr was born on the 20th of May, 1885 in the city of Turnu Severin, then part of the Kingdom of Romania. His father, Friedrich Johann Löhr, came from Mainz in Germany and had served on a hospital ship in the Black Sea during the Russo-Turkish War, and his mother, Yekaterina Mikhailovna, was a nurse from a medical family in Odessa, in today's Ukraine. Thanks to the origin of his parents, Alexander Löhr grew up around more than one language, and he belonged to the Eastern Orthodox Church like his mother. Alexander was the youngest son, and he got 2 older brothers. As a teenager, he entered military schools in Austro-Hungarian Empire in the cities of Košice and today's Slovakia, in Timișoara, in today's Romania. In 1903, he moved to the Teresian Military Academy near Vienna and finished his studies in August 1906 with excellent results. He stayed in the army, and during the First World War he served in the Austro-Hungarian army as platoon commander. After the war, he remained in uniform in the small armed forces of the new Austrian Republic, which was created from the remnants of the destroyed Habsburg Empire. He rose through staff posts and became director of the Air Force in the Federal Army's ministry. In 1934, he was named commander of the Austrian Air Force, which was small but steadily modernizing. These were years when European governments talked often about air power, air defense, and the reach of enemy bombers. In many European countries, citizens were worried about the possibility of the destruction of their cities from the air. In a few years, Löhr organized specifically these types of attacks against cities and civilian populations. Meanwhile, he moved in the world of politicians and army officers with professional ease, reading reports, touring airfields, and learning the reality that if he wanted to change something in the army and promote new types of weapons and tactics, he needed support of the politicians. All of Löhr's plans for the future in the Austrian army were changed in 1938. The annexation of Austria by Germany in March 1938 placed him in front of the question if he wanted to serve in the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe. As a professional, intelligent, and educated soldier, he agreed and was transferred to German service. Soon, he commanded Luftwaffe forces in Austria. The next step came in March 1939, when he took leadership over Luftflotte 4, which during the Second World War became one of the primary divisions of the German Luftwaffe. With that command, he entered World War II, that began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany attacked Poland. One of the most brutal attacks of this first phase of the global war was the bombing of Warsaw. The goal of German planners was to break the spirit of Polish resistance by destruction from the air. This attack was not organized by Löhr, but he was making notes. In less than 2 years, he used the same tactic against another European capital, Belgrade. On the 27th of March 1941, a coup in Belgrade had overthrown the pro-Nazi government, and Peter II Karađorđević, a young pro-Western king, came to power. Hitler was furious and decided the country and its capital must be punished. The code name for this attack was Unternehmen Strafgericht, or Operation Retribution. The bombing started on the same day as a ground invasion, on the 6th of April 1941. The Royal Yugoslav Air Force had only 77 modern fighters, ready to defend the Yugoslavian capital against hundreds of German fighters and bombers, and one of its officers had already defected with knowledge of their codes and key defense sites. The German side concentrated hundreds of aircraft near the border and sent them in waves. The first day brought 4 separate strikes. The second day brought more. The city lost control of its systems, and military headquarters could not direct defense as lines and roads failed under the German bombardment. Löhr developed a plan to bomb Belgrade. He intended to use incendiary bombs first, and to let the fires serve as markers for later waves of bombers that would return after dark. In practice, this meant that when people emerged to help or to look for family, they faced new attacks that followed the glow of the burning quarters. The city was occupied on the 13th of April 1941, and Yugoslavia capitulated 4 days later. For this operational success, in early May 1941, Löhr was promoted to Generaloberst, a rank equivalent to general. His next steps followed the front as it shifted south and east, this time not in the ranks of the Luftwaffe, but the German army, the Wehrmacht. In July 1942, he took over the German 12th Army for a short period. By the end of that year, his title changed again, and he became the commander-in-chief in southeastern Europe. The forces under him were grouped as Army Group E. The geography of his command stretched from occupied Yugoslavia to Greece, and over to Albania and the Adriatic coast. His daily work moved across staff maps that showed rail lines, passes, bridges, and towns where resistance was growing. Löhr was selected to command the German forces in the Balkans because he was Austrian, and Hitler thought that he would better understand the Balkan region, as it was for a long time part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Löhr understood his assignment. The quiet Balkans were important for the German industry and war planning, and he was planning to deliver it to Hitler. As he said during the war, Hitler appointed him to make the Balkans quiet, even if it was the quiet of the cemetery. In this task, Löhr failed miserably. The Second World War in the Balkans turned into a brutal struggle against partisan movements and against growing Allied presence at sea and in the air. German units, police formations, and local collaborators carried out anti-partisan operations that often fell hard on the civilians. Villages were burned. Hostages, among them women, children, and the elderly, were shot without trial after attacks on German patrols. As the German hold over Europe weakened, repression grew harsher. Löhr was supporting these actions against civilians. Also, in cases when he got into a conflict with the SS, which in his point of view operated without any control, he said, "At least in Serbia, there are no more Jews." His anti-Semitism was evident. He even criticized Italians for sheltering Jews in their territory and complained about it to Hitler. Löhr's brutal approach against Jewish communities can be seen also in the case of deportation of the Jews from the Greek city of Thessaloniki. An almost entire community of around 56,000 people were deported to Auschwitz death camp in a joint operation of Wehrmacht, SS, and German railways. Almost all of the deportees were murdered in Auschwitz. As Germany's position collapsed in 1944 and 1945, German units under Löhr's command began a slow and painful retreat north from Greece through the Balkans. The movement took place under pressure from partisans and from Allied air forces. Columns stretched along mountain roads, bridges were blown and repaired and blown again. The end of the war came on the 8th of May 1945, when Nazi Germany capitulated. On that day, around 150,000 men from Army Group E were still in Yugoslavia. The last German units were only 72 hours' march from Austria. Löhr negotiated with the British about transferring the parts of the army group still on Yugoslav territory to Austria under British custody, but the British refused. Löhr then gave the order to surrender to the Yugoslavs. He himself was handed over to the Yugoslavs by the British. After this, he was taken to Belgrade and interrogated. The war in Europe was over, but the reckoning for Alexander Löhr had only begun. Löhr's career showed how a trained officer of the old monarchies moved through the new age of air war. He learned to think in terms of sectors and sorties, weights of bomb load, and radii of action. He adopted the belief that speed and shock could decide a campaign before the enemy could respond. He was responsible for the murders of civilians by bombs and fire, and also for wiping out entire communities in the Balkans. The Yugoslav authorities put Alexander Löhr on trial for war crimes. The charges included the bombing of Belgrade in April 1941 and the anti-partisan reprisals carried out under his command, when also wounded partisan soldiers were shot on the spot by German units and villages were burnt to the ground. In the courtroom, the events of the occupation were reshaped into a careful record. The court found Alexander Löhr guilty and sentenced him to death. On the 26th of February 1947, he was executed by firing squad in Belgrade. His burial followed without ceremony. The city which he tried to punish and had mercilessly bombed became the place where his life ended. He was 61 years old.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.